thank you very much for joining our panel discussion. What panel is it, you ask? So this is the Game Publishing Unveiled Strategies for Emerging Developers with myself, William Cox, Anna, and Tom. If you are wondering what this is about, I will let you know by reading the blurb. Dive into the world of game publishing with our insightful session, Game Publishing Unveiled Strategies for Emerging Developers. This engaging discussion explores effective approaches tailored for developers entering the industry and aiming to bring their games to market. Our panel of seasoned publishing experts will share invaluable experiences and tips, offering a comprehensive guide through the intricate process of getting your game published. And I think that covers it quite nicely. So, to do a quick round of introductions, Anna, would you like to go first?
Yes, sure. Hey guys, my name is Anna. I'm a lead producer with mobile publishing team, and me and my team, we are responsible for everything related to pre-production and production stage of all the games that we're signing with our external partners, as well as collaboration with all of the internal teams from Kwalee who help release and market games, such as marketing team, growth team, as well as QA and tools who help to finish the production cycle and release successful builds. So that's me. Tom, do you want to go next?
Very nice. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. My name's Tom Cunliffe. I'm a game lead in the mobile publishing team. That's a product-focused role. So my area within the team is pretty much strategic direction for features going into the portfolio of games that we look after, all the external games that come through that we work with, and the teams and developers that we work with. I'll work with them and our internal teams to make sure that we're focusing on the features, and the overall direction of the game is pretty much going to deliver the best results and make the game work, to summarize it briefly.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Tom. And so I'm Will. My role is basically to oversee all of our external development operations at Kwalee, essentially making sure the production, game design, and the product teams are all working well with our development partners to get brilliant games to market. Quickly before we kick off, I just ask, if you have questions, please pop them down into the system. If you see a question you like, give it a thumbs up so it gets voted to the top, because we will try and spend a fair bit of time going over those popular questions at the end. To kick things off though, let's talk a little bit about probably what everybody that's listening or watching this talk wants to do, which is making a hit game. You know, that's what we're here for. That's what we want to support developers to do. So in terms of getting that done, Tom, what does our testing process look like for a developer that's brought us a game? What sort of things are we going to do with that?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing to note is that the exact type of game that comes our way and the phase of production it's in, we can really look at things across that spectrum. So whether the game is not even a game yet, right? Whether it's a concept or whether it's something that's almost feature complete, it's something that we'll take as seriously as one another, pretty much. Like, they go through the same green light process. Our testing process for actually getting that then off the ground very much depends on what it is that's being delivered to us. So if you as a developer come to us and say, we have about a soft launch level of content for this game, like we've planned to our soft launch milestone, or of a developer that's sort of more semi-professional, shall we say, or like in their spare time, if they're just saying we have about a day of content or 2 days of content, we'll extrapolate that out and work out exactly what type of test we need to run on it. We generally have about 4 different phases, maybe 5 actually, if we're including sort of prototype testing, to determine KPIs on a game, and it really just depends on how much you're bringing us. So if you really have the bare minimum, we'd have what we would call a prototype test, which is kind of a discoverability test. We're just really trying to find some key facts about the game, where we're not really expecting that much in the way of content, all the way through to technical test where we're trying to find bids for big scale and getting some core KPIs in there. Monetization test where we're trying to work out if the game can actually turn a profit. So once we have key monetization features in there, trying to work out where the revenue's coming from and whether the game can actually produce enough revenue to succeed. Assuming games make it the way through one of these tests, or 3 of them, depending on where it falls in the pipeline, we would then move into a soft launch phase. So actually getting it off the ground and putting it out in the US, which is the market we mostly focus on in soft launch, to a mass audience and seeing what the level of scale we're able to achieve. Throughout that testing process, however, there's a lot of extra work involved in terms of actually getting things together, which would be maybe Anna's domain, if you wanted to chip in on that, Anna.
Yeah, so when it comes to preparing and preparing the builds and games for all of the stages that Tom just mentioned, there's several things that are good to keep in mind for studios who just start working with us. Is to first, well, let's say if we're talking about the very early stage, the prototype, when there's still no clear or finished game yet, and external team is still thinking on what the game will be in the end, it's very good to at least have a very clear vision where you wanna, what's the end goal for this game is, how it will be in the end, like the end result of everything. So this will for sure improve efficiency and flow of work. And of course, it's very important to make sure that everything supporting game design, game planning is done in advance. And of course, it depends on the size of the studio that we're working with. If, for example, there's a need from our external partners to provide support in planning the production, or let's say maybe even helping them to figure out the final game design, we as a publisher provide this support. In case if this is a larger studio with all resources available, then usually we just oversee and maybe help during the production stage to make sure that we are ready for the testing and the game will have the best chance. And then, of course, just to be sure that all of the deadlines and all of the milestone requirements are achieved before moving to the next stage, before moving to the testing phase. And then after results are available, after results are presented, be ready to possibly maybe do additional work, because not always everything turns out great. Use it as a learning experience, use it as something that needs to be improved in order to move to the next stage, because sometimes it happens and maybe not all of the metrics and not all of the targets are hit right away. So it means that we need to go back to work, we need to go back to the brainstorming, to the workshop stage, and figure out what will be this unique mix or unique offer of the game that will make it click, that will make it connect with the players. Probably I went off topic a bit.
No, I think that was good, Anna. I think probably the other thing to press home is that being prepared to do additional work is not really optional, right? I mean, we've all launched quite a lot of games while we've been at Kwalee together. And I think pretty much 100% of the time, there is always something that goes wrong or needs to be changed, or metric that doesn't work. So I think that is a really good point, right? Be prepared that no matter where you go into those testing phases, there will be something wrong and there will be more work required to turn whatever it is you've got on whatever stage of the process it's at into a final product that can make good money in the market. I think, yeah, both of those were very interesting. One, like I said, right, we've launched a lot of games together. What would you both say are when you see a project, you're like, yeah, that is a great project. I can't wait to work with this developer. I can't wait to get this product into the testing period. What would you say is, for you, is the one thing that really makes a project or a team stand out and make you like get really excited about something? I'll start on that one with Tom, what are your thoughts there?
I think the main thing that sticks out for me is really the people behind it first and foremost, because while the game is very, very important, obviously, like we can't just launch something based on goodwill and sociability. I still feel like the people behind the game that they're about to endeavor on, their mentality and how they see the project and what principles they stand for on that project are very, very important. We can always tell when somebody's heart isn't in it, if they're just after the revenue, or they're just after the sort of a quick win. Well, first and foremost, there's no such thing as a quick win in mobile publishing. It's hard work at the end of the day. But we can always tell when we're talking to somebody who has a really good mindset in regards to launching their game. It always sticks out, and we can always tell with them when we talk to them for the first time. We really want to work with people who have goals for their own business and not just the game. Like that somebody who's they're investing in this game because they believe it's going to work, but we believe in them that we will then go on to have a multi-year partnership with them because they're dedicated to growing their business and growing their portfolio of games. This is really, really fundamentally important, and that's the main thing I look out for as a prime factor. Can't think of a good way of describing that.
It's a great point, right? And I think we've always looked at team first over whatever particular game it is, right? I think hopefully lots of people managed to catch Tom's talk earlier with Gabriel, who's someone we've worked with on. I dread to think, I don't know if you had this stat in that talk, but I dread to think how many prototypes we worked on together with Gabriel and the Clap guys.
Yeah, it's got to be hundreds. It's got to be.
Yeah, at least, right? But that's all because great team, great mindset. And so, yeah, that definitely agree with you on that point. Anna, what would you say on that front of things that make a game and a team stand out?
I wanted to bring up the same point as Tom. First, for us as a team, and for production team and everybody who works with us from internal departments in Kwalee, studio, like the relationships, the chemistry, and also seeing that they are passionate about their project, about their game, is probably the most important if we're talking about building a relationship with our external partner. We need to keep in mind that when we sign the game, our relationship can last for years. That's why it's like it's like a new family member that joins you. And that's why it's very important that the communication is fluid, that we are able to bounce ideas off each other, that if there is issue, there is no problem to bring it up and to discuss it. Because this is probably like one of the key aspects of launching a successful game is people, is teams, and them finding the good rhythm, good working, and good working relationship. If talking about the game, it depends, because even if it's really rough idea, maybe something that clicks right away is, well, of course, the first thing is how unique is the game idea, if there's something been done like this before. And of course, now with so many games being launched every day, maybe it's a bit more challenging to come up with this very fresh, unique idea. But still, if that's the case, if that happens, this is something that grabs our attention right away. And of course, how sticky is the game? How usually we do play tests us first internally, play the game, and then if we can't get our hands off the game for hours and hours and days, we're all like, yes, this is something good. So stickiness.
I mean, I guess it does all come down to making good games, right? That people want to play, that people stick around with. And often I think that, well, those two things really go hand in hand, right? Good developers that have got a good mindset are going to come up with good games. And like Tom was saying, we can work with developers and sort of develop those ideas and turn them from sticky ideas into products that can really work well in the market. I am, earlier than expected, going to go to some of the questions we've got coming through, because I think obviously people are super interested in the way that we look at projects, how they can work with us. And And I think it's probably good if we can answer some of those questions directly for people. So Tom, you sort of started to touch upon this a little bit in your first answer. How far progressed through the development cycle should a game be in order to reach out to a publisher? I think we know the answer to that, but Tom, if you want to cover a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think it's something that's quite easy for us to answer. I mean, you can bring a game to us at any stage, but our level of interest develops the further along it is. If you come to us and say, sort of our dream scenario, I think I said this at the talk earlier, but our dream scenario, right, is that a developer says, hello, I've made a game with 180 days of content. I've never shown it to anybody on the planet. For some reason, I'm showing it to you instead of anyone else. Could you launch this for me, please? Then I think the answer would be, well, we would take that more seriously than most of the games that come through our pipeline. Reason being, the level of risk for us is relatively low at that point. So we're confident that there's something for us to deliver upon. You're in a position where you're sort of sitting back because the bulk of the work is done. And it's really just a case of UA optimization and LTV optimization, where we can get a clear picture of where we stand. And at that point, develop a roadmap for improving numbers without needing to go and build substantial amounts of games. So from our point of view, that's a relatively risky project versus coming to us with a concept. I think unless the more background experience you have that proves that you can deliver, if you've got 20 years in industry and you're a notable CEO of 2 companies and come to us saying you have a new idea, yes, we're probably going to take that more seriously than others. But I think the short answer is the further along you are, the more interested we would be in taking it further. But you can bring a game to us at any stage and we'll consider it just as seriously as any other.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the key point there is you can really be at any stage. Obviously the risk profile and what we're able to do with a game, right? If someone comes and they've got all that content, it's much easier for us to support that than it is, you know, if someone comes and they've got, if you press this button, something happens. So yeah, I think that great answer. Thank you, Tom. Another question I've got, which I don't know if it's going to start looking a bit like an advertisement for working with a publisher. Because obviously I think we're going to open the rabbit hole here. What are the pitfalls of self-publishing? And we need to make that sound really bad so that people want to work with us all the time. Anna, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So pitfalls of self-publishing, well, it depends. Probably if you're a large studio, it's less risky and you have resources and teams taking care of different responsibilities, different areas. However, if you're a small studio or indie developer, probably self-publishing is very, very tricky. Is something that will be hard to achieve unless, again, you have very unique game that will just organically start getting users and retention. So one of the, let's say, benefits and / risks not doing it yourself is having enough resources to cover all the areas during the development stage. For example, if you're just a developer, you might not be that experienced with art part of things. And this is where a publisher could provide help and support to have a UI and UX designer added to the project to help out the developer. Another thing is QA, for example. Maybe there is a developer, an artist from the side of the external studio, but they don't have enough QA resources or they've been doing it themselves. And of course, our team has many testers and plans to check the game, to check everything that might go wrong, to try to break it, to figure out what users might find or what blockers can emerge. So this is also very beneficial. And of course, if there is lack of resources, development resources, for example, the big project becomes larger than life, we are doing successful tests, but we realize that we need to add a lot more into the game to continue to the next phase, then we might add additional development resources, programmers to help out the studio. And of course, localization services, not to mention marketing and UA, which is probably one of the significant benefits of publishing with us or with any game publisher, because it could be very costly. It could be to keep it going, to keep the campaign running, to keep the interest alive. It will take a lot of resources, and this is where the risks are minimized when you're partnering with publishers.
I think that's I think the two key words are resources and money, right? Self-publishing, you need to make sure you've got all the resources. Have you got a team that can make creatives? Have you got a team that understand how the UA algorithms work? Have you got all those functions you mentioned, Anna, QA, etc.? And then have you got the money to do the advertising and compete with people that have got multi-million-dollar budgets who are vying for the exact same audience that you are? Tom, it sounded like you might have a little
I just fully what Anna just described is pretty much just encapsulating the problem of doing it yourself. I don't think it's a valid decision to try and go and self-publish at the end of the day. I would assume that everybody watching this talk is more interested in mobile than PC console. I think if you're coming into mobile, the idea that you might be able to scale up on organic alone, I think you're going to have to reset your thought process a little bit and realize that you're going for a 0.001% chance that that's actually going to happen. While it does happen, it's easy to look at success stories and see that as kind of a benchmark on mobile for what's possible. Organic discovery is very difficult on mobile in today's landscape. The big players like Scopely and other publishers have got the charts very much locked down with deep pockets. So unless your pockets are very deep to fork out for users, I think it's highly likely that you're not going to be able to get your game in front of a ton of people. For mobile especially, I think if you don't have ambitions of becoming a publisher and self-publishing yourself, and therefore have ambitions of finding a very significant grant or investment opportunity, then I think your natural choice is to go up with a publishing route, which allows you effectively to focus on what you're good at, which is development, instead of wearing 10 hats and needing to do all the marketing yourself. Would you rather spend all week developing creative videos, whereas we can just put our team of creative artists on that, or any partner can realistically do it for you, right? I would rely on partnerships to get this stuff done, and don't put yourself in that hole of needing to do 10 jobs to ultimately get something out that struggles. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if you're a smaller developer, right? Where we were talking earlier about Clap and the partnership we've had with them, and that's why it's two guys, and the publishing team augments what they're able to do by filling in the gaps that they don't have expertise. I don't know, Tom, if you know the specifics on what the biggest team we've worked with is, but still fairly small. But obviously, that the bigger the team is, the less gaps there are. But the likelihood is, but I think everyone watching this talk, you're probably a small team, and you are guaranteed to have gaps, and those gaps will come and bite you if you're not ready for them.
Yeah, we definitely haven't worked with a team larger than 30 people. Like that's an exceptional amount of people as well for what should be a lean mobile studio. I'd say on average it's 10 people, and varying between those things.
Right, I have a question that is pinned to the top of the list. I don't know who pinned it, but I'm sure it's someone important that wants to get the answer to it. So I'm going to ask the question just in case I get in trouble. Tom, this is going to be a good one for you, I think, because you're looking at this stuff all day, every day on a number of our games. How much data on retention and potentially monetization is good for a publisher to judge the viability of a game?
Yeah, I suppose that is a good question, in terms of getting a clear answer to it. In a lot of our testing process, we don't ideally want to be running a very, very long UA test where we're investing a ton of money in UA. We have a healthy budget for when we run tests, and it's a significant budget, but we don't want to sort of indefinitely run UA for testing, which means we essentially rely on projected ROAS instead of concrete ROAS. So return on active spend for definition of what that acronym means. I hate acronyms, so I need to remember to define what they all actually mean for everybody watching. So if we are if we are projecting that, for example, by day 180, I think day 90 is actually what we currently look at, that we're recouping more than what we're spending, so 100% and more of the return on active spend, then that for us, we've projected that that's going to be a good option, which means we don't need to actually acquire users for 90 days to get that answer right. Past about 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks of acquiring users, we can let that run off and project where that's going to end up, which gives us a pretty clear idea of how viable the game will be in a shorter amount of time and without overspending when we don't need to. So projection is the short answer there. Like for actual monetization and profitability, we tend to look further. So day 90, as I said. For retention, we tend to look quite hard at day 7 plus is kind of the loose definition of it. I think as a company, we're slightly going off focusing on day 1 as much as we used to, and a few folks are calling day 1 a vanity metric. I think that's fair. I think for the kind of games that we focus on now, day 7 and beyond that is a super important metric. However, we do still encourage to we will focus on trying to get a strong day 1 score, since ultimately that's capturing more of the audience than we otherwise would. I hope that answers your question. I think basically day 7 retention is a very interesting retention stat for us to capture, and then projecting up to day 90 for the return of active spend for the monetization.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. Thanks, Tom. Anna, anything to add on to that? Or
no, probably Tom summarized it really well. So if you guys want to continue with next questions, because I think we have quite a few still waiting for answers, and
we do have quite a few still waiting for answers. But yeah, I think Tom, probably just to add on to your point, like you say, right, we want to see those particular stats, but we can also help developers to get those stats right. Like if somebody's got a game that's got enough content and they come and work with us, we will support getting the answer to those questions. We can do that efficiently. We can do it quickly.
Absolutely. It's not like a hard target from a first test. It's very much just like, let's see where you end up, and this is kind of where you should be aiming, but we will obviously work very closely with you to get your game towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a really nice question that I wanted to ask that it disappeared. The ordering on these questions is crazy. Yeah, here we go. Anna, we'll start with you on this one. What is the biggest factor when deciding whether to kill or extend a game's lifeline if it's underperforming?
Ooh, interesting question. All right. So when we're at the end of the milestone, when we're testing it, running the tests, getting the data, then depending on the results, if the results are not giving us the full confidence that we should proceed with this project, and we still not sure, it varies. It depends first of all if studio willing to continue working on this game, to make sure that we need to also understanding and realizing that they might need to rework something maybe from the scratch, or maybe just to add something else on top in order to hit the target. So willingness of studio to go back to the square one is of course important. Then from our side, in terms this probably will be one of the, besides our internal decision-making process, if we see that there is still potential to maybe polish it a bit more. If we see that there is a potential for that, then of course we will continue working until we run out of all the ideas, all the options. We don't. The only reason why we would give up right away, if it's absolutely super clear since the very start that we didn't make it, and plus the studio doesn't have resources or willingness to continue starting from scratch on the project.
Yeah, I think that the word potential is sort of the key thing, right? If we, along with the developers, see potential in changing the position of the game from underperformance to overperformance, let's say, we'll continue working on it with the developer, right? If the potential isn't there, the metrics suck, whatever those metrics might be, ultimately coming down to ROAS, then we'll kill a game, right? And we'll be quite brutal on that if there's no potential for something.
Yeah. Well, also to
let-
add to this, killing the game doesn't necessarily mean that we terminate the partnership. So we can keep
Yeah,
receiving
yeah.
ideas from the studio. Okay, guys, it didn't work out with this game, but let's see what else you have, because we see that the team is great. They have great ideas. So we just keep working on the next best idea with them.
Yeah, great. Tom, I'm not going to go over to you with that one because I think there is a better question that I'm going to ask you. And probably given that the audience, this is on the emerging track, so we expect people earlier in their career, smaller developers. I think this is going to be a quite an interesting one. Is there a big difference between types of games and what is an acceptable game to publish? Brackets, hyper, hybrid, casual, mid-core, hardcore. So what would your advice be on for people starting smaller studios? What type of game should they be targeting to make?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think it depends what your goals are. I think if you're quite early on and your goal is, I want to bootstrap a studio, start making some real games that are going to have real success, which would be my recommendation. I think the best way to learn as well as actually get results is to build something that can get results, versus just wanting to learn and polish your skills personally. I think those are sort of two different angles to take. I think if you're just trying to polish your personal skills, let's say you're an artist and a programmer and you're just trying to make some personal projects together with the eventual goal of launching something, I'd say it's a super good idea to make a few hyper casual games, mostly because you can rattle off quite a few of them quite quickly. You can get used to delivery. I think hyper casual is the best way to actually learn how to ship games, which is surprisingly hard. You can get bogged down in constant development and polishing without ever shipping the thing when you need to. Whereas hyper casual can teach you how to ship stuff in 2 weeks that has some sort of level of viability. So I think that's a really good way to learn. I would say hyper casual isn't super viable now because it's so heavily linked to the global UA landscape, and as CPIs, cost per installs, have started to increase due to a myriad of reasons, right? Which we don't have to go into. I would say hybrid is probably your best bet, since it's a little more accessible than casual mid-core. Casual mid-core is generally going to require either a long period of time or a larger team. They have a higher level of arts, a higher bar of quality required for that audience, since they target more specific audiences that have certain expectations, whereas hybrid can still go for a fairly mass audience and perform well based on how you're optimizing the product model. Since core and hardcore were mentioned there, I would say if your motivation is to make the kind of games you want to play, regardless of how well they perform, by all means, go and make a hardcore game. I think if you bring it to a publisher, you might struggle. You probably have that's probably the one area in which you'll have better off going the organic route and relying on a very narrow pool of users. Will it ever become a chart-topping hit? I would say the odds are stacked against you, but it's entirely possible to do it. So my recommendation would be, if you're trying to make something that can succeed, and you're still relatively early on, start with hybrid. If you're able to scale your team up, then casual and mid-core games might be the most interesting option for you to eventually look into.
Great. So another one for Anna, I think, and I think we've touched on this, so I hope our answer to this is going to be a unanimous agreement. How would you guys feel about a studio / indie that has sent you multiple projects over the years that you reject? Would that developer be less likely to get published the longer they try, or would each attempt be equal? I hope that's not a loaded question as someone that we've rejected loads of games. But Anna, what would your answer be to that? Because I think it will be exactly the same as what me and Tom would say.
I hope so. Let's see. So I think it doesn't depend on, we're not going to reject somebody if they constantly send us game ideas and we reject them. Maybe actually it's a good thing. It means that they're dedicated, that they don't give up. So if it's a studio that has passion about their projects and we know that we can work with them, I think send us as many as you have. So keep us sending until you run out of ideas, but from our side, if we see the potential in the story and in the game, I think it's the frequency of pitching us is not going to decrease your chances of us publishing with you.
Yeah, totally agree.
I hope I answered right.
Oh, yeah, it was the answer I would have given, so
Okay.
probably that means it's wrong. There's a couple more that I wanted to cover because they sort of go into actually the positives of working with a publisher. I've lost it because somehow the order of my questions keeps changing. But essentially, Tom, I think this is a good question for you, and it won't be exactly the question because I can't find it now, but consumer research, we obviously do a lot of this, and it's something that is a lot easier for a publisher to do. What factors determine whether we bring in people to do external consumer research for us?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's kind of sort of the qualitative data angle. That's something we do. I think mobile's mostly known for being a quantitative world where we're very sciencey in terms of what we rely heavily on data and numbers to drive decisions compared to compared to PC and console, which is there is some data involved there, but it's mostly based on the game itself and the community and how well the community is driven. We do rely on qualitative data. It's something that we want to do at certain milestones, though. I think it's unlikely we would take a prototype and put it in front of dedicated users to start gathering feedback from players. We'd really want to understand when we want to be able to ask and answer as many questions as we possibly can. So it tends to be something that we'll do around the monetization version of the game. So once it's sort of in its most basic form, which we might describe as an MVP, that's something which we might then want to create a version of that, give it over to a provider who can go and get us those users and then deliver us some qualitative feedback. As a developer, because this is obviously a service we can provide for you if you're working with us, and other publishers can no doubt do the same. As a developer, if you're just looking to get that kind of feedback, I would still hold out on showing, for example, friends and family and other people that you can get your hands on through social media until you have something more cohesive that will help you out. If you're showing something and you've only built a third of the game that you actually want to build, that data is probably not going to be as helpful for you because you already have plans that are in motion. Somebody might suggest something that goes against your plans, and that can influence your decision, which may not be the best idea. You kind of want to show somebody like the most whole version of what you're going for possible, and then let feedback influence the direction it takes versus taking a wild left turn in the middle of your production. So I would say try and get a more holistic representation of the game together, minimum viable product or test, and then put it in front of users, whether it's through a provider, which we can do, or through social media and friends and family, which you can obviously do yourselves.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to answer one more question because I'm sure it's one that everyone will be very interested in. Is it possible to receive financial support from a publisher during the iteration process? If so, how early? So this will vary by publisher. Obviously, I think people need to get paid. So it's a valid question. The answer to this is yes, it is possible to get financial support from a publisher. How early? That is entirely dependent on what the game is, what the team is, what the needs are, how the fit is. So I think the message on that sort of thing is ask, go speak to publishers, speak to us, show publishers what you've got, tell publishers what you need, and if the match is there and the content and the team is a good fit, you will get funded.
And I would just also add to that being incredibly direct about that as a goal is something we appreciate. We don't generally, and publishers generally don't want to find out that you're looking for advances like quite far into the green light process, right? Just in your pitch, make sure you're incredibly upfront about what it is that you're looking for. If you need funding, be upfront about it, but you don't need to be afraid to ask. At the end of the day, it's possible. But it depends on the myriad of reasons that Will mentioned.
Yeah,
it
and also
will hurt the relationship much more if you reveal later on that you need money than if you tell us at the start or tell another publisher at the start. We will never judge a product or a team based on the financial ask. It will obviously form part of the equation, but it won't be, oh, they want money, we're not going to do anything with them. But you can guarantee we're very unlikely to work with you again if you haven't told us that you need money and then you run out of money halfway through development. Anna, sorry, you were gonna.
Yeah, it's a bit off topic, but since we're talking about don't be afraid to ask from the start what you need. This is also very important because it's also going to affect how our relationships will be. If there is a certain need, or maybe you don't have, as a studio, especially if it's a small studio, you don't have certain expertise or resources available upfront, just tell us, hey guys, yes, we have great programmers, but we're really not good with the other part. Or like we don't have this and that. This is very, or we maybe don't. Maybe we need a bit of a support of the producer to help us plan the project to make sure that we hit the targets, the deadlines. So tell us upfront what you need. It's not going to be problematic at all to fill in the gaps from our side. But again, as Will says, it will be problematic if already full on, and then we realize that there's something that you cannot deliver or provide because you failed to. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask from the start, and it will just make things more effective and smoother in the production cycle.
Right, we have run over by about the amount of time that we were late starting. So if any of the admin and operations people are watching, you can't blame me, and I refuse to be in trouble for it. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us. I hope you found that useful. By all means, please reach out to us if there's any additional questions. If you want to talk to us about anything, we'll be very happy to do that with you. And we look forward to seeing your games in the future.
Yep. Thanks everybody. Bye.
See you later.